This is epic. Absolutely, positively epic. We are on the front lines of history right now, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't think we've ever seen anything quite like this. We probably never will again. So enjoy it while it lasts, my gosh. As crazy as it is, we've just had another new development that is shifting the polls around once more. And this time, fully in Donald Trump's favor. Welcome to the program, everyone. I am Trish Regan. It is good to have you here. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, make sure you share, make sure you comment. Again, we are live at this moment. We have just heard from RFK Jr., who has announced his endorsement for none other than President Trump. And let me tell you, it's rocking the poll numbers. So we're going to get to all of it. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about just exactly what these Polymarket poll numbers really are, whether they're accurate or not. They tend to be, because you're talking about money on the line. We're going to talk about Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Yeah, we're going out there because we have to hear from Powell. That would be our Fed chief, who gave some indications that there could be some good things ahead for investors. Not necessarily the economy, but, you know, I don't think that the economy has been front and center on anyone's mind for the last 3.5 years. We're going to talk about these polls. We're going to talk about RFK Jr., and we get to talk about this little squabble here that my good friend O'Reilly got into with another anchor on another cable network. Well, I know who I stand with this. I'll be curious to see your side of things. And speaking of squabbles, speaking of cable news, Joe Kernan, great guy over at CNBC. I used to work with him there. He let Elizabeth Warren have it. So I've got to show you this thing. You're going to enjoy it, ladies and gentlemen. And finally, there's some new questions being raised on just exactly what the Secret Service knew, didn't know, why did it not follow sort of basic common sense in Butler County, Pennsylvania. We will discuss. But first, here to the headlines of the day. Breaking news, we have an endorsement from none other than RFK Jr. in the Trump campaign. He is coming out swinging. Oh my gosh, I just watched the entire thing. It's just amazing. He gave it his all. And basically let the media have it. Wow, this is really kind of incredible to see. I want you to see it here. He started it off saying, look, the Democrat Party didn't used to be this way. I don't know what happened. Funny thing happened on the way to the forum. They changed. They massively changed. They're out there talking about Putin, this, that, and the other. Well, they've effectively, because they have media embedded with them, they've taken over. They are the establishment, and they've prevented people like him and people like Joe Biden even, say what you want. You got a woman who never won the Democrat primary now running at the top of the ticket. Let's hear directly from RFK Jr.
I'm sorry to keep everybody waiting. 16 months ago, in April of 2023, I launched my campaign for President of the United States. I began this journey as a Democrat, the party of my father, my uncle, the party which I pledged my own allegiance to long before I was old enough to vote. I attended my first Democratic convention at the age of 6 in 1960. And back then, the Democrats were the champions of the Constitution, of civil rights. The Democrats stood against authoritarianism, against censorship, against colonialism, imperialism, and unjust wars. We were the party of labor, of the working class. The Democrats were the party of government transparency and the champion of the environment. Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. True to its name, it was the party of democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money. When it abandoned democracy by canceling the primary to conceal the cognitive decline of the sitting president, I left the party to run as an independent.
Wow, just wow. So the whole thing was incredible. I mean, he just let the media have it. He's like, you networks, and you're sitting in this room. What he did say, actually, and this is important, is that he praised this new media that has still enabled him and afforded him the opportunity to get his voice out, right? That I keep talking about it all the time. I'm just blown away by what we're able to do here. My ability to communicate with all of you. Do me the favor, make sure you subscribe, that you share, you like. It's important right now. This was the game changer for RFK Jr. I mean, he still wasn't able to make it to the finish line, right? Because they had their predetermined candidates. But he said, look, there are 10 states that are swing states right now that I run the risk, if I am going to continue to run, I run the risk of actually tipping the balance for Kamala Harris. And I don't think that's the right thing for our country right now. So he is taking himself off of those swing states, and he is putting all his might and effort behind Donald Trump. He's out in Arizona. They're going to be speaking together tonight. They're in Arizona, so lots more good stuff to come. I want to show you the polling data. I want to show you what Trump's saying about this. But first, a quick word from one of our great sponsors, American Hartford Gold. Stunning island of Ireland. Just incredible. You know, when I was a little kid and we'd visit here, my mom would say, if you're lucky enough, you might actually get a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow, because that's where the leprechauns leave it. So we looked, we didn't find any, but I consider it probably having been good advice, because as I got older, I learned that gold is pretty valuable. It's valuable in terms of diversification. I encourage you to take a look at it. And when you do, call our friends, our wonderful sponsors over at American Hartford Gold. You can go to trishlovesgold.com, Trish Loves Gold, and wow, it's windy here. You can text 65532, my name, Trish, to 65532 for your chance to get up to $15,000 in free silver, ladies and gentlemen. Just a terrific offer. Again, major news coming out right now. JFK, forgive me, RFK Jr. has just changed the game, totally changed the game. You know, right before this happened, I'll tell you, I was here, I was preparing the show, and I was looking at some graphics, including some graphics from Polymarket. And what I found was that Donald Trump was ahead, interestingly ahead, not as much as he had been last night ahead of her speech. She had actually gained some ground. If you're not familiar with Polymarket, this is basically a betting market. It's kind of like, you know, you're betting on stocks or something, and you're trying to figure out, they're trying to gauge who's going to win. This was moments ago, right before the news of RFK Jr. coming out, declaring his support for Donald Trump, announcing that he would be suspending his campaign. And guess what happened? Within minutes, what you saw was Polymarket had shifted. This is what I just got as I came to air with you right now, 52% to 48%. Now, isn't that interesting, right? Because every single other poll keeps telling you something entirely different. And I keep saying, you know what, you got to be careful. You got to be careful in terms of what you're trusting, what you're believing in a moment like this, because there is for sure a concerted effort, in my estimation, there just is, to try and affect sentiment that you see there on both sides. And so if the media is all in the tank for Kamala Harris, what they want to do is show you how she's just triumphing and how Donald Trump has no chance in HE double out. But Polymarket actually says something entirely different. Polymarket is where people are actually going and they're betting. And they're saying, okay, I think this one's going to win. I think that one's going to win. Let me take a look here with you at the numbers as we went into everything that was going on last night. So again, as we went into Kamala Harris's speech, or forgive me, as we came out of Kamala Harris's speech, I should say that he was actually more significantly ahead before she spoke. And then after she spoke, we saw him still ahead, but only ahead by the likes of, say, 50% to her 49%. So super, super duper close. And then right now, here we are in this moment in time. Take a look at that graphic, everyone. Trump, 52%, Harris, 48%. This is real money that's going to work. So it's a little less, shall we say, colored or polluted by some of the political shenanigans that go on when you have, for example, an actual poll and you have this media bias that is so rampant. Some other questions that Polymarket is asking that are worth addressing. Kamala Harris wins the popular vote. You see 71% of investors here do believe that she is going to win the popular vote. But the popular vote is very different, of course, than the Electoral College. And that's one of the reasons why the left so despises the Electoral College. The college that has actually served us quite well and actually makes sure that everybody gets a seat seat at the table, including little states like the one I grew up in that just has a few electoral votes, the state of New Hampshire, right? Why else would New Hampshire matter? Other than we're first in the nation. And by the way, Kamala got nowhere in New Hampshire. Let me just throw that out there. Why would a state like that matter if we didn't have an electoral college? Well, you see the left, they don't like the electoral college because they just want to go to California and New York and Chicago, right, Illinois, and call it a day. But you can't do that in the United States of America. You got to find a path where you get consensus from all the states. So you got to win the Electoral College. And this means that these swing states now are suddenly totally more in play. I'm just going to go some more Polymarket numbers here for you, just to read off what they are suggesting about swing states. This is very interesting. Georgia, Arizona, where he is tonight, he's ahead by a huge margin, according to Polymarket. You get a 10-point spread there. Massively ahead. 61% of investors putting money down on Trump winning Georgia compared to 39% for Harris. So that's very interesting. 16 electoral votes. Arizona, obviously a biggie. You see Nevada with 6 electoral votes, 53% going to Trump, 47% to Harris. And in fact, Polymarket also has him winning Pennsylvania. What do you know? Pennsylvania, 52% to 48%. I've been talking about this a lot. In fact, I've shown you 2 recent polls that suggest Donald Trump indeed is winning in Pennsylvania. So that's a biggie. And then you go to Wisconsin, and then you go to Michigan. Now, Wisconsin and Michigan are going to be tough for him. They're going to be challenging, at least according to Polymarket. We've seen some of this reflected in some of the other sort of regular old school polls as well. Michigan, investors are putting a lot of money on Michigan for Harris, 61% to 39%. Remember, these are not actually polls. They're not calling up people and saying, hey, who are you going to vote for? They're actually betting on whether one candidate is going to win over the other. So they're all putting their money on Kamala Harris in Michigan and in Wisconsin. But you know what? This could change. I mean, we just have a big sort of, I would say, amount of enthusiasm that just got injected to the campaign. And it couldn't come at a better time. It really couldn't come at a better time because, you know what? Donald Trump needed something. He needed something because he's up against a machine. He's up against a machine that is, a Hollywood machine, if you would, that was promoting Kamala Harris at all costs. I mean, it's really kind of sickening. I want to show you some examples of that in just a moment. But first, as we continue to dive through some of these polls, I want to at least point out what Rasmussen has been saying, which is that Trump is ahead, and this is a fairly recent poll, as well as even Fox News, who, when they reported on this, oh my goodness, it was like, it killed him to write the headline, but he's up a point there according to the Fox News poll. So not as significant as what you're seeing at Polymarket, but again, these polls tend to be a little bit more of laggards, if you will. At this moment, we are waiting on Donald Trump's reaction to all of this. I can tell you he's going to be really enthused. He really is. He talked about it just a short time ago, actually, on Fox. Let's listen in.
So I've known him for a long time. He's as you know, he's a little different kind of a guy. Very smart guy. He's a very good person. If he endorsed me, I would be honored by it. I would be very honored by it. He really has his heart in the right place. He is a respected person. Women love some of his policies, and I guess some people don't like some of his policies. But overall, I thought the Democrats, he was a Democrat. I don't know what he is right now, but he was a Democrat. They treated him very badly. I think he would have, he goes around saying he would have beaten Biden in the primary. I think there was a good chance. What they did to him was what they did to Biden. They really were harsh and threw him out. They wouldn't let him go to the vote. I mean, they made it impossible for him to compete in primaries because he was doing so well. And they basically made it impossible for him to do what I think he would have been successful. I think he would have overthrown Biden because Biden is so bad as a president. When I hear this talk about Mount Rushmore, I turn off your television. If I have to read an article, I just throw it down. Mount Rushmore for this man who is the worst president in our history. He's allowed, and she is, because she was the border czar. Now she disowns that. She's allowed millions of people to come into our country, many of these people totally unchecked, totally unvetted. Many of these people came into our country, think of this, from prisons and jails, right, from mental institutions and insane asylums. And, Brian, there's many terrorists coming in. There's no doubt about it.
So Donald Trump really, once again, highlighting the fact that Kamala Harris was in charge of the border, and yet we've seen a massive number of people that have come in, the largest actually in history. And so thus, I think, in some ways, to a certain extent, and I'm being extremely diplomatic here, the proof is in the pudding, if you would. Right? In other words, if you cared that much about actually securing the border, as she promised us she did last night, if you cared that much about it, then why didn't you do it? You had 4 years, for goodness sakes, nearly 4 years, and yet we've gotten nowhere. You've had time to fix the economy, and yet we've gotten nowhere. You look at the instability in the world today vis-a-vis Russia, Ukraine, some of the other things that, by the way, JFK Jr. talked about, and he's just passionate about trying to ensure better peace in the world. And I think that this is going to be meaningful for the Trump administration. Let me just say, like, he needed something. I think that the people out there, especially the people in the middle, like, I get it. You know, if you're part of the base, and you maybe, if you're watching this show, and you're so needed and you're so loved by him, but it doesn't necessarily mean the whole election. You've got to enthuse some other people in the middle. And I think that the middle had gotten kind of lost, if you would, all in the hoopla of this ridiculous, if you would, DNC effort, you know, and you're hearing from this, that, and the other, all singing Kamala's praises. All will, by the way, she will not go off script. She will not take an interview. She will not do a press conference. Think about that. You're going to elect a woman who's got a terrible record and then won't do a darn thing? I don't think so. But the media keeps glorifying her. They can't help themselves. I guess they're really vested in this. Take a look at the New York Times headline that made me want to throw up last night. They had this thing sitting up there for some 24 hours. What drives Kamala Harris? The art of the possible. Dun-dun-dun. Oh, goodness gracious. So this was, last night ahead of her assuming the podium. Do you think that Trump's ever going to get anything like that? I mean, there's no way. There's no way. Donald Trump gets no love from the media whatsoever. And I don't think he really cares. I mean, some of the conservative media, of course, it's different. They've kind of come up in part in defiance. I mean, what I would consider myself, I guess, part of that. I wouldn't have necessarily going into all this, right? I'm actually a registered independent because, hey, you want to cut taxes? You want to grow our economy? You want to secure the border and you want to keep us safe? You got my vote. I don't have to be partisan in that respect. However, given what they have done the antithesis of all the good things that were put in place during the Trump administration years, from economic policy to border policy to a policy of strength via peace. All of that got undone. And it's amazing how quickly that can happen. I mean, think about it. I mean, Donald Trump had 1.7% inflation that he handed off to Joe Biden. And what did we see? Oh dear, this. 51% increases in gasoline, 32% in electricity, airfare up 23%, groceries overall up 22%, eggs up 47%, car insurance up more than 50%. I mean, this is wild stuff. And yet they're going to give her an A+ report card? I don't think so. They're completely, totally delusional, and they keep buying their own BS. What drives Kamala Harris? The art of the possible. Hey, lady, come right on back down to reality, okay? We need you in reality, because the reality is things sort of suck. All right? Like, they just kind of stink right now. And even Maxine Waters, my goodness, even she is admitting, maybe they didn't do the best job, you think?
They see that their lives have been a little bit difficult. Rent's too high. They don't have 20% for a down payment on a home. On and on and on. We've got to do a better job.
Yeah, you bet you got to do a better job, lady. I like how she says they, like, I'm up here and you're down there. And okay, the people, Marie Antoinette, let them eat cake. Maxine Waters, along with Nancy Pelosi, talking about, how the people feel. The people feel. Yeah, the people feel pretty screwed by you guys because you have done nothing to contain inflation. You've done everything. That good old Inflation Reduction Act, which sent prices through the roof. And anybody who had taken a single class in economics could have told you that one. We saw it from a mile away. I saw it from like 1,000 miles away. And yet, Kamala Harris gets up on stage and says she's going to reduce inflation. Okay, you had that chance. That she believes in America. She's handing out red, white, and blue flags everywhere. She's got the Dixie Chicks singing off tune. Oh my goodness, that was a whole scary episode. And then you get this guy over on ABC News trying to sell you this bunch of you-know-what.
Donald Trump has tried to define her. You know, they talk about her, the Republicans, the Trump Republicans, as a San Francisco liberal, as a radical. They call her Comrade Kamala. But she gave a speech, George, that if you take out that section on abortion rights, much of this speech could have been delivered at a Republican convention before Trump. She talked tough on Iran. She promised that as commander-in-chief, America would have the most lethal and strongest fighting force in the world. She talked tough on Russia, on China. She talked about border security. She really gave a speech that was designed to go at independents, moderates, disaffected Republicans, the vast majority of undecided voters in the country. A very interesting move and quite a contrast from the way she ran for president the first time when she tried to get the nomination 4 years ago. This is a Kamala Harris that sounded a little bit more like Maggie Thatcher or Ronald Reagan, especially on national security, than like Bernie Sanders.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Really? Is that what you heard? Well, if you heard that, it's because it's all a whole bunch of lies. Lies that even RFK Jr. has seen through with his own two eyes and articulated so brilliantly just moments ago.
I'm sorry to keep everybody waiting. 16 months ago, in April of 2023, I launched my campaign for President of the United States. I began this journey as a Democrat, the party of my father, my uncle, the party which I pledged my own allegiance to long before I was old enough to vote. I attended my first Democratic convention at the age of 6 in 1960. And back then, the Democrats were the champions of the Constitution, of civil rights. The Democrats stood against authoritarianism, against censorship, against colonialism, imperialism, and unjust wars. We were the party of labor, of the working class. The Democrats were the party of government transparency and the champion of the environment. Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. True to its name, it was the party of democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money. When it abandoned democracy by canceling the primary to conceal the cognitive decline of the sitting president, I left the party to run as an independent.
Yes, he did. He did indeed. And now he's in a position where he can actually do a lot of good to try and prevent Donald Trump from winning. You know, his vice president spoke about this recently before this news all came out. Incidentally, one of the reasons he had to come forward with like the big announcement was because it got leaked when he filed the documents. This is what Nicole Sheridan, the woman who was at the top of the ticket with him, was talking about just earlier in the week. I want you to take a listen.
There's two options that we're looking at, and one is staying in, forming that new party, but we run the risk of a Kamala Harris and Waltz presidency because we draw votes from Trump, or we draw somehow more votes from Trump, or we walk away right now and join forces with Donald Trump, and you know, we walk away from that and we explain to our base why we're making this decision. Not easy.
Clearly.
Yeah, not an easy decision.
Not an easy decision at all, but I think ultimately and he explained this, what the issue became was that there was really no way, if you would, to possibly continue on having this campaign so robust with, all of this stuff. He couldn't go back to the donors and ask for more money and ask everybody to work when he realized ultimately that he might be actually helping to succeed in getting Kamala Harris elected, which in his estimation and in his vice president's estimation is not good news for anybody. So very, very big development in this wild, wild election. I mean, this is kind of incredible. It's just incredible. And I was saying to people, because I can feel it, right? Like I know when you guys are like, oh, and like people are messaging me saying, there's no way, there's no way, there's no way. Look at what's going on. Sure, I get it. Like things were maybe like seeming like they were sucking all the oxygen out of the room, but that was by design. They're trying to do this and they're trying to make you feel deflated. I'm like, no. You need something to kind of rally around. Well, RFK Jr. just gave it. This is a tipping point. And you know what? You don't have to take my word for it. You can go right back to the markets. You can go right back to Polymarket, which is now predicting, guess what? Donald Trump is going to win the presidency of the United States. Now, again, these things could shift. I caution, these things could indeed shift. But this was before. Okay, you see him, he was still in the lead, 50-49, and then this was immediately as the news came out. I suspect that those numbers will continue rallying even higher, 52-48. Just really, really amazing to see. You know what? When there's real money on the line, it matters. Speaking of real money, I want to just give a shout out for everyone that hasn't subscribed to my financial research newsletter to take a look at 76 Research right now. This is a newsletter that I started in conjunction with my dear longtime friend, Rob Horton, who is brilliant as a stock picker and has spent 2 decades running billions of dollars on Wall Street. And I said, Rob, you know what? We got to do something. We got to do something for everyday folks that aren't invested enough. You're thinking maybe through my retirement fund, maybe through my pension fund. It's not enough, guys. Whatever you can do on the margin to be putting money every single week into the markets, I do feel very strongly will ultimately pay off. And you know what? It's going to pay off way bigger than anything else you could possibly do. The question is, how do you start? What do you do? This is why I created 76 Research, 76research.com. Right now, you can get this stock picks, basically, for just $1 a month. I'm going to see if I can put this up on the screen. Just $1. Use code DOLLAR right now. Code word dollar, DOLLAR. Do that because it's $1 a month. And you know what? If you don't like it, you can cancel. And it's only $1 a month for the first 2 months. It goes to $9.95. Anyway, it's an introductory rate. I can't urge you enough to do this. There are 3 different model portfolios for you, where you get 10 to 15 stocks. In each one of those, there's an inflation protection portfolio. There's a basic income builder portfolio for those of you that want to be living off of dividends, for example. And then there's an American resilience portfolio if you're more on the growth trajectory. So use code word dollar. Get the 76 report today. You can go to 76report.com or you can go to 76research.com. It is really, really important that you take all this stuff into consideration today for your future. I mean it. By the way, you can also follow us on our @76 Research channel. That is our other YouTube channel. And then you get some good, really one-on-one time with me and Rob because it's a small little channel. We just started. It's very, very dedicated to investing and finance and all those good things. But you'll learn a lot. So go take a look at 76 Research. I want to get to some more, we were just talking about this horrible inflation and why would anybody give Kamala Harris another shot at that? I think they're trying to have you forget everything. It's part of the reason why, guys, she doesn't want you to think about the stuff that matters. It's why she's not willing to sit down with any reporters. It's why she's not willing to give an actual press conference. She can't go off script. I mean, you think they kept Biden on a short leash. My goodness, this woman has to be all on tape. Well, my friend Bill O'Reilly, former colleague over at Fox, he addressed this head on a cable network last night, speaking with a former CNN anchor, and he kind of let him have it. It's somewhat interesting and entertaining to watch because O'Reilly, he's like over it, right? Like we all are. Like, lady, oh, I just called her lady. I get in trouble with this host. Lady, do an interview. Go give a press conference. Enough is enough. You're running for the presidency of the United States of America. Thank you very much. Watch this.
This is ridiculous. This whole thing is ridiculous. If you look at Trump's speech, and I'm not a spokesman for Trump, remain in Mexico. Very specific. All right? Very specific. I had nothing to do with 2025. Very specific. I don't want to cut Medicare and Social Security. Very specific. Doesn't matter what Trump said, even though he was specific. In other areas, he wasn't. He says, in 48 hours, I'll stop the Ukraine war. How? He doesn't say. So he did what Harris did. But he did provide specifics because he was in office 4 years and he was successful driving the economy and keeping the overseas stuff pretty much contained. So he went back to that. Look at his speech, compare it to this. This has no specifics, but you excuse it because she's in party mode. Boom. No, we're Americans. Look, we're at a very serious point in our history. Very serious point. We need problem solvers. This woman won't answer a question from any journalist. That alone tells you what her capacity is.
Yeah, okay. I hear you. She should be doing interviews. I wouldn't call her this woman. I'd call her vice president, say her name. Sounds less disrespectful. But he said he doesn't know anything about Project 2025. Maybe because he does. Well, look, saying that this woman, I don't know that you'd like anybody talking about your kid that way. What I'm saying is, Project 2025, he says he doesn't know anything about it. He was on a plane with one of its main people celebrating the project. So I don't know. I also don't think it's a boogeyman, and I don't think Project. But the fact that he says he repudiates it means nothing. Why would you believe what he says?
Oh, that's right.
Why would you believe what he says?
It's not a matter of what I believe.
On, you're not.
She says.
Oh, so if he says it, then it's true.
Not a matter of what I believe.
It's true.
Oh my goodness. All right. So O'Reilly, I love him actually. It's just a funny clip I wanted to share with you. By the way, they're talking about Project 25, which, you know what, like, it's crazy. Like the left like tries to present this like it's some kind of hidden thing, Project 25. And I think they caught Trump on defense about it. Project 25 is actually a really, really good thing. And you know, they're way out there in the open. They want you to read about it. They encourage you to read about it. I do too. I like everything I see. It's secure the border, unleash American energy, de-weaponize the federal government and dismantle the deep state, improve education. Is there anything wrong with these things? No. But they want you to think otherwise. They're spending millions and millions and millions of dollars trying to paint Project 25 like it's some deep, dark thing. Well, guess what? You can go find out for yourself what the truth about Project 2025 is, something that I personally think is very good for our country. I believe in things like a secure border and unleashing the potential and power of American energy. I believe in making sure that we don't have a federal government that is in any way, shape, or form weaponized for political purposes. And yes, I believe in kids and families having access to education, the best possible education they can get. I don't see the controversy, but guess what? These people are trying to paint anything they can as somehow dangerous. And it's all cloaked in secrecy. It's not cloaked in secrecy. It's right there. Go to www.25truth.com today, 25truth.com, to find out everything you need to know about Project 2025. But I'll tell you, O'Reilly, his patience was running thin, and I know him, and he's got very little patience. So you could just feel it, right? Like coming right straight through the screen there, with Chris Cuomo trying to justify or in any way, shape, or form stick up for Kamala Harris, and O'Reilly wasn't having it. I get it. And what journalist right now, I think he did get him on that one, like, why would you stand up for somebody who is not willing to actually get out there and sit down and answer the tough questions? She doesn't have any policy. We're going to talk some more about it coming up. But first, new intel today about what went down in Butler County, Pennsylvania. So apparently our Secret Service is like the worst Secret Service ever, because they don't even pick up radio calls and they don't demand to get more resources. Now, it's possible that the Biden administration had a little something to do with that. In fact, Josh Hawley is out with a very severe letter. he sent this here to the acting director of the Secret Service. I want to share it with you because he basically said that he's gotten whistleblower intelligence that says, you know what? They tried very hard to be able to get more resources there in Pennsylvania, but they couldn't actually get them because according, and I'm quoting here from the letter from Josh Hawley, according to the whistleblower, the lead advance agent for the protectee trip typically submits a manpower request to the local field office. This normally includes the number of personnel and other security assets needed for the event and is submitted to the U.S. Secret Service Office of Protection Operations manpower for final approval. According to the allegations, officials within this office preemptively informed the Pittsburgh field office that the Butler rally was not going to receive additional security resources because, again, I'm quoting, Trump is a former president and not the incumbent president or vice president. According to the whistleblower, the manpower request did not include extra security resources because agents on the ground were told not to ask for them in the first place. Oh, wow. So they're like self-censoring here, right? They can't go and ask for the necessary resources because they're being told there's no way in HOO you're going to get them. The letter goes on to say that, Senator Hawley wants some answers. The allegations come despite your testimony, he says to the contrary, before the Senate on July 30th. Remember when this guy went up there? By the way, the woman who was in charge, who somehow didn't think any of this was her fault or that, there was anything really wrong. I mean, you nearly took out the former president of the United States. Thank you very much. The current head of the GOP ticket. And she tried to stay in the gig. Oh, they got rid of her. This guy came in. Anyway, these allegations come despite your testimony to the contrary, he writes, before the Senate on July 30th. When asked whether former President Trump's team had been denied resources, you stated, quote, if you're talking about Butler, Pennsylvania, all assets requested were approved. Oh, well, what if you already sort of circumvented that and went around things by calling and saying, don't ask for those assets? It is our understanding that Dr. Jill Biden, who was attending a dinner that night, got a whole lot of assets. She had like triple the amount of the agents, perhaps quadruple the amount of agents there at that dinner than Donald Trump, who clearly is kind of a big deal target. I mean, I'm just saying, in the scheme of things, and he's doing this open air rally, they weren't going to approve any for that Butler trip. But you see, guys, what does it come back to? Maybe they didn't want Donald Trump doing an outdoor open air rally. Maybe they didn't want to give him resources for anything because they wanted him to go away. They did not want him to be running for president again. This is obviously an unusual circumstance, an unusual time. As I said, we are on the front lines of history. Well, guess what? He lived. He made it. And he stood up and said, fight. And I think a lot of people are answering that rallying call, which is going to be terrifying to the left right now. Hence the quick switcheroo, putting Kamala Harris, whose name not even Bill Clinton can pronounce, in the seat. Meanwhile, let's be honest, okay? Shall we be honest? There are questions that need to be asked about the Secret Service itself. Like, why wasn't it able to do? You got one job, guys, one single job in the world, and that is to protect the asset being Donald Trump. And you failed, like spectacularly. The only thing that would have been worse is if he hadn't been looking at that chart on the number of people pouring into the country. If he hadn't been looking at that chart, we wouldn't have Donald Trump here today. So what was going on with the Secret Service? I mean, reportedly, people on the ground, you've seen the video, I've showed you. They're like, wait a second, there's a guy up there. And the local law enforcement knew there was a guy. And yet somehow Secret Service was oblivious. This is becoming increasingly a new problem. As word has just come out that the local law enforcement on their walkie-talkies were talking all about that guy, and somehow the Secret Service never tuned in. Watch.
Yeah, Kate, a local official is telling us that if Secret Service had picked up these radios, they likely would have heard a warning that went out 3 minutes before the shooter opened fire in Donald Trump's direction. And that warning was about a man on the roof. And that's been a prevailing question over the last month as various investigative bodies have been trying to determine how the shooter managed to get a clear line of sight at Donald Trump on July 13th at his rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. And look, these radios were intended to establish a direct line of communication, or at least inform Secret Service about what local police officers on the ground were discussing in real time. It appears, according to the Butler County District Attorney, that those radios were never picked up by Secret Service, which really underscores more broadly this disjointed communication structure that sources are describing to us that Secret Service has used not just leading up to the Butler PA rally, but for years now. They actually do not ever have any sort of direct communication with local officers on the ground. Sources saying that instead they rely on a really disjointed, almost game of telephone between a series of liaisons and command structures to pass messages back and forth, that really being a core problem, and how critical information was lost on July 13th as this crisis unfolded. And look, the Department of Homeland Security is looking into all of the security failures around the July 13th rally and the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, and is explicitly looking at the communication breakdowns that day. I'm sure that they are going to think very hard about implementing some of the tools they haven't implemented yet, and also trying to revisit this idea of how local police officers interact with the Secret Service at these large security events.
Yeah, I mean, clearly something's really messed up. Take a look at this graphic again, and let's just go through it. Witnesses saw a person matching the shooter's description carrying a rifle outside the rally. Okay, so witnesses saw that. Senior law enforcement official has said that the alert went out before the rally about a suspicious person. How is it that the Secret Service isn't on high alert because there's a suspicious person in the vicinity? The local police radio alert about a man on a roof, my gosh, minutes before the guy ever fired. I mean, it's bizarre. Secret Service sniper shoots, kills shooter 15 seconds after, ladies and gentlemen, he opened fired. Why are you allowing him to be in the position of open firing? I mean, I don't get it. Did they think it was like a big party? You know, a lot of people think something else, a whole lot more sinister. I'll just say this. You know what? They didn't do their jobs. None of them did. You need a whole new team. I know Trump likes them. I'm sorry, you need a whole new team, okay? Because this team, they can't get it done. And they get their, you know what, up there. Well, I won't be crude. But it makes me angry. It makes me angry because you think about what could have been and how dangerous that moment in time was. Super dangerous. Okay, Elizabeth Warren, your favorite senator. Oh, I know, right? Your favorite senator, Elizabeth Warren, got a little bit of a whooping, shall we say, from none other than Joe Scarborough over at CNBC. Joe's very conservative economically. I worked with him too. And he's smart and he knows business. And I would just say, you know what, you're a senator. You don't really know business. You're not really following earnings. And you tend to have a propensity to use the most politically expedient argument. So when you think you can complain about inflation by just saying, it's the price gouging. You see, I'm starting to talk like Kamala. Kamala calls it price gauging because she doesn't know the word gouging. But they're trying to say that somehow it's the big corporations at fault. Well, Joe Kernan on CNBC, he hosts the early morning show Squawk Box. He let her have it, and it's really good. And normally I wouldn't play this long of a clip, but oh my gosh, you got to see this, guys. You've got to see Kernan just destroy Elizabeth Warren.
I can paint you a picture of how that would work and how it's worked in the past, where we've tried to artificially hold prices down. Competition doesn't come in. People don't, like if beef is too high, people don't move the chicken. The competitors don't come in to undercut where the beef prices are. Nothing works when you try to artificially control prices. It's just a supply and demand issue. It's a flawed idea.
So did you have a question here?
Yes. Why would you propose a flawed idea when the real problem,
so
if you really want to help the middle class, if you really sincerely want to help people having trouble at the grocery store, it's not price gouging that's the issue. And if you look at it seriously and really want to help them, then let's do something about it together. Fine.
I understand if you want to do a lecture about this, but let's just start with where have you been for the last 30 years as 36 states have price gouging laws, and they have used them effectively. States like Texas and Florida, they've used price gouging laws. Price gouging laws are not price control.
Incidentally, just FYI, price gouging laws are completely different, right? In other words, you can't have a monopoly. That's not allowed to go in and deliberately raise prices. That's actually not happening right now. They're just saying that because it's working. Politically speaking, it wouldn't work economically, what they're talking about.
Price gouging laws are to say, sometimes markets go off the rails. And when they do, we need some ways to get them back on the rails. We need some curbs on that behavior. So, for example, we watched in the pandemic how prices went up for a whole lot of reasons. They went up partly because we had supply chain kinks, we had problems because of the war in Ukraine that cuts supplies of certain commodities. And one of the things that happened as a result of that is there were corporations that said, whoa, now that we have inflation, now that prices are up overall, this is a great opportunity for us
wait till you see Joe's reaction.
Prices, not just in passing along costs, but to go way, way, way above that. And how do we know that it was way, way above just passing along costs? Look at what happened to their profit margins. If they'd just been passing along costs, profit margins would have stayed about the same. But for some industries, some companies, profit margins shot up. And do you know where they shot up most often? It was in companies or in industries where there was a lot of concentration, a lot of market power, places where the market is not functioning competitively. So you end up with someone, you remember we all talked about egg prices. You end up with something like this giant egg producer, Cal-Maine. And Cal-Maine,
I guarantee you Joe's dying.
Eggs,
and that's why they're not showing him on camera.
Increased by 718%. That's not just passing along costs.
Senator,
and that is a time
that's sophistry. Your example on Kraft. Your example on Kraft is even worse.
You finished first. In any of the states around the country that already have price gouging laws in place.
Can I tell you why those are fallacious and misleading at best? And your Kraft analogy is even. Why can't I tell you? Please let me tell you. Kraft, you say, was 440% profit increase. The example you used, the prior quarter from the year before, they had a charge of $1.3 billion, an accounting change which wiped out profits. Then they earned what they normally. Let me finish now. They earned.
You didn't let me finish. Look at the data. Come on. We have economic study now after economic study.
This is the way it always goes.
When there is more concentration,
40 million eggs were destroyed because of avian flu.
When there is more concentration in an industry, we have seen much greater increases in
Do you attribute the inflation?
Margins.
That's what you think we need to do to solve it?
They're not random. They are not random one-offs. It is part of the problem when you've got companies that are gouging consumers on prices. Consumers need to know they've got somebody on their side.
Senator,
and
listen, we're trying to help. We're trying to actually do.
Where are you in the 37 states that currently have price gouging laws?
Just quickly on that point, Senator Warren,
this
is Kelly here. Can I just clarify how this would work?
This is the way you never lose an argument because no one can ever say anything back to you, Senator.
The state price gouging laws take they.
Oh my gosh, it's true, right? She just goes and goes and goes. And you're confronted with reality. But if you're Elizabeth Warren, you're just not going to listen to it. I'll tell you, over at 76 Research, we did a really big deep dive in this. If you subscribe to the 76 report, you can get it. Just go back and check some of the archives there. Because, listen, the profitability, the margins have not been great. They've been lousy. Why? Because, costs have gone up. In other words, you got to get your goods from point A to point B. And if it costs more to transport them because this administration has done their darndest to drive up energy prices. And guess what? That actually affects your ability to make a profit. And at some point, yes, you do have to push those costs onto consumers, but you have to be very careful, because at some point your consumer's like, well, if you're out of sync, right, with the market, the consumer will go and shop somewhere else. It's typically why, I know capitalism isn't perfect, but it's typically why you see over and over and over again throughout history, it has turned out to be the best system we have. And so in her scenario, this would all get worse. This would get worse. You see what I'm looking at? All of these crazy price increases. They've had their shot, guys. They've had their shot. And what have they done? They have driven inflation way up. It's one of the reasons why I keep saying you got to be diversified, part of the diversification strategy. I'll tell you, if you'd listened to me when I started this show, I think gold was around 1,500 or so, and I kept saying buy it, buy it, buy it. Anyway, we're up around 2,500 now. I'm not going to totally predict the future in the markets, but I will tell you this: diversification is critical, and part of a well-diversified portfolio includes an investment in something like gold. So if you're looking at gold, I got a good offer for you, up to $15,000 in free silver. Silver hasn't moved as much with gold, so that could bode well, because there might be some opportunity there. We shall see. I'm not your financial advisor. I have to be very clear. But gold is something that I'll tell you personally, I do invest in my portfolio, because I consider it a good way to help even out some of the fluctuations. Actually, lately, it's just been a great investment. But you can text Trish to 65532. Text Trish, my name, TRISH, to 65532 for your chance to get up to $15,000 in free silver. You can go to trishlovesgold.com. Go to trishlovesgold.com today and take a look there to actually get that opportunity to get that really, really good deal. Again, with up to $15,000, you guys, in free silver. Just really great stuff. So important, right? When you think about everything that's going on. We got a stock market that I'm guessing, if the Fed has anything to do with it, is going to see some new opportunities in the near future. Another reason to subscribe to my 76 research. Use code word dollar, DOLLAR, so you can get it for just $1. You're going to get stock picks, which, everybody wants, because where do you begin in this environment? Rob Horton, my colleague there at 76 Research, and I have been working so diligently and so hard on this. Rob spent a couple of decades on Wall Street, ran billions of dollars, is just a brilliant stock picker, and I want you to have the access to the best possible ideas out there. So that's the methodology behind 76 Research. It only costs $1. And guess what? You can cancel it if it goes wrong for the first 2 months, and then it goes up to $9.95. Anyway, check it out. For an additional $23, you can get a model portfolio with specific names, and we walk you through if we make any changes, if we sell something, if we introduce something else in. You get all of that information. Really important right now to be focused on yourself in the future. And look, there could be some opportunity. You got Jerome Powell out there saying, hey, we're going to cut away some more. Jackson Hole, Wyoming, it turns out the labor market wasn't doing as well as they thought, so they got to cut.
The time has come for policy to adjust. The direction of travel is clear, and the timing and pace of rate cuts will depend on incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. We will do everything we can to support a strong labor market as we make further progress toward price stability. With an appropriate dialing back of policy restraint, there is good reason to think that the economy will get back to 2% inflation while maintaining a strong labor market.
So, wishful thinking. Let's hope it works. These guys, they're going to give it the old college try. The risk you run, of course, is that if it doesn't work and then you create more inflation, you're going to have some problems, which is why you're going to have to temper this in other ways. Perhaps don't do an Inflation Reduction Act again to the tune of billions of dollars, in which you then inflate prices. Don't do Kamala's ridiculous idea of $25,000 for each and every new home buyer for the first time, right? If you never bought a home before, she's going to give you $25,000 towards your first home. And hey, if you came here from another country or your parents never had bought real estate before and you're a first generation home buyer, you get a special sweetener deal on top of it all. So what will that do? Well, let college tuitions be a good example for everybody. What does it do? It raises the price of everything because it's free money. And when you have free money, at some point, someone's got to pay the piper, so to speak. So all of this stuff, I'm telling you, it matters. I think they're crazy. I think they're really crazy. But, it's all about getting votes. And so they're doing things that are super political, but frankly, super dangerous for our political well-being and our economic well-being. And this is why RFK Jr. is coming out swinging. And this is why I think you're going to get an injection of excitement that is going to really start to take off. Again, look at the Polymarket poll, 52% now predicting. This is where the money is, okay? This is what people are betting on. They are saying that Donald Trump is going to be the president in 2024. And just look at this, look at the electoral map. This is where it all is. So we'll see. I think a lot of people are very hopeful in a moment like this. Please make sure you subscribe, like, share. Hey, if you're not a team member, do that, because we're going to have a team member discussion coming up. I got to run. I'm over on Newsmax in 10 minutes. I will see you guys here on Monday. I will see my team members in a private chat right after Newsmax. And 76 Research. If you hadn't gone to 76 Research, at 76 Research, Rob and I will be there tonight. So make sure you join the conversation. Have a good one. I'll see you Monday.